A loyal dog returns home, with a crying lion cub in his mouth. His owner, a lonely war veteran, thinks it's just another strange day in the wild, until he sees fear in the cub's golden eyes. That's when he realizes someone has killed the cub's mother. Before he can react, poachers begin closing in on his ranch. With no backup and no time, he must risk everything to protect the helpless cub. What follows is a desperate chase across burning African grasslands. A battle between compassion and cruelty, faith and fear. And one man's final chance at redemption, hidden in the heartbeat of a lion. Before we begin this unforgettable journey, hit subscribe and stay with us, because some stories don't just touch your heart, they change it forever. And when this story ends, tell us in the comments, would you risk everything to save someone who can't even speak your language? The copper dusk settled over Willow Creek Ranch as though someone had drawn a bruise across the sky. Ethan Browning, a 52-year-old former war medic turned ranch owner, wiped his brow with the back of his hand while closing the fence that circled his aging property. 10 years earlier, he had purchased the quiet land as a place to escape from the noise in his head, memories of explosions, screams, and brothers lost in desert sands. Out here there were no sirens, only the sound of wind groaning through long grass and the distant bark of his faithful German shepherd, Ace. Ace wasn't just a dog, he was the reason Ethan still woke up every morning. A fierce, intelligent companion trained in Ethan's own gentle, methodical way. They shared a life of comfortable silence, sunrise patrols across the golden prairie, quiet dinners by the flickering fire, and slow evenings filled with peppermint tea and the worn pages of Ethan's old medical journals. That evening had begun like every other. Ethan cooked simple stew, tossed Ace a leftover bone, and planned a quiet sleep. But all tranquility shattered when Ace, who had gone for his usual twilight run, returned with a bark Ethan had never heard before, sharp, panicked, pleading. Ethan hurried across the porch just in time to see Ace trotting through the gates, and behind him stumbled a lion cub. The cub looked scarcely 3 months old, its fragile frame dusty, ribs faintly protruding, eyes wet with terror, and worst of all, it was crying. Soft, miserable noises came from its throat as though trying to call for someone it could barely remember. Ace stopped, turned toward Ethan, and let out a small whine, nudging the cub forward with his nose. He looked at Ethan the same way a soldier might look at his commander. "Sir, do something." Living near the scrublands halfway between civilization and the wild, Ethan had seen jackals, antelope, even the occasional cheetah on his cameras. But lion cub at your doorstep was something else entirely. His heart lurched, torn between instinct and responsibility. Was it injured? Was its mother somewhere close, watching? Or worse, was someone trafficking it through these lands? Trying to calm Ace, Ethan crouched slowly, knees protesting. He raised his palms, speaking gently. "Easy, easy now." Ace backed up slightly, making room. The cub didn't growl, it simply shivered, tiny breaths rattling. When Ethan reached out, it did not bite. Its body felt warm, exhausted, and strangely trusting, as if something deep within it knew this was its last chance at safety. "I don't have much, but I can try," Ethan murmured, scooping it into his arms. The cub whimpered but didn't fight. He carried it into his dimly lit kitchen, Ace dancing anxiously around his legs. On the countertop, Ethan laid down an old woolen blanket and gently placed the cub upon it. Dried blood and dirt stained its paws, though there were no obvious wounds. He ran his fingers lightly along its spine and ribs the way he once had for wounded soldiers, checking for fractures, infection, trauma. Nothing. Just extreme fatigue and dehydration. He sliced a piece of raw steak and offered it. The cub ate hesitantly, licking each strip with tiny pink tongue, as if afraid the kindness might vanish. Ace lay beside it, tail twitching in protective vigil. As Ethan watched these two strange souls, his disciplined war dog and this terrified scrap of a king in training, something inside him cracked open. A sense of purpose he thought he'd buried in another life. Flicking on his old radio, he leaned on the counter, mind whirling. A lion cub loose in human lands meant two things: either its mother was dead, or something darker was unfolding nearby. Rangers hadn't reported any prides passing through in months. Which begged the question, where had Ace found him? And more hauntingly, were the people responsible coming back to retrieve their prize? Outside, night pulled itself across the ranch like a black sheet. Ethan extinguished porch lights, bolted the doors, loaded a flare gun, and sat beside the cub until its tiny eyes fell shut in sleep. Ace curled protectively around them. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He watched the moonlight streak across the blanket and knew two things with absolute certainty. First, the cub could not be returned to the wild until it was stronger. Second, before dawn, he would drive into the unknown, retracing Ace's path, to uncover the truth of where this fragile creature came from, and why fate had brought it to his front gate. The early dawn sky blushed pastel pink over the flatlands as Ethan tightened the straps of his weathered backpack. Inside he packed a roll of bandages, flask of water, emergency flare, and a pistol he hoped he wouldn't need. He left the kitchen gently, whispering to Ace to guard the cub, who slept curled on the woolen blanket like a sunflower folded for the night. Ace stayed put, ears forward, tail thumping once in acknowledgement. It felt strange to leave his partner behind, but Ethan needed him at the ranch in case anything, or anyone, came searching for the cub. Ethan pushed open the gate and began following Ace's tracks from the night before. His boots crunched along dry, sandy earth flecked with thorny brushes and brittle acacia twigs. For 15 minutes he moved eastward, paying attention to every broken stalk, every dip in the dust, soldier training still sharp despite a decade of peace. As he crossed a shallow streambed, a fearful knot coiled in his stomach. Beyond it lay a wide stretch of land rumored to be used by poachers and illegal breeders who traded in exotic pets. People with heavy pockets and hollow souls. A half-hour later, Ethan found his first sign. In a clearing beneath a cluster of dry shrubs were faint drag marks. His eyes narrowed as he crouched. A small pool of dried blood stained the sand copper-brown. Nearby were tire impressions, heavy, wide-treaded, the kind used by off-road pickup trucks. He traced the marks with his fingertips and exhaled a sharp breath. Someone had slaughtered an adult lion here. His instincts screamed. But one thing stood out. Alongside the tire tracks were small paw prints that did not belong to an adult. They were cub prints, uneven and desperate, sprinting. Ethan straightened slowly. Here was the truth. The mother had been killed, and the cub must have escaped in panic, running blindly into the night until Ace intercepted him. He swallowed, jaw tight as fury kindled in his chest. Who would kill a lioness so close to a reserve border? Why had none of the rangers been alerted? He scanned the horizon. Far away, barely visible through morning haze, stood a dilapidated watchtower, rumored to be used as a secret holding point by black market poachers. Ethan set his shoulders. He headed toward it, careful but determined. As he climbed the sandy hill, he saw shredded tarps flapping against rusted poles. Broken cages lay scattered, feathers and bones scattered around them like the aftermath of a dark carnival. In the center, still dripping sticky crimson into the parched soil, was a makeshift butcher's slab. Ethan gripped the edge of the table, stomach twisting as he imagined the terrified lioness roaring while her cub watched. Whoever had done it had left in a hurry, perhaps startled before collecting the cub. One thing was certain, they would come back for their merchandise. The realization punched through his veins like adrenaline. The cub was not safe at home anymore. If they traced its fleeing tracks, or followed Ace's scent, they would eventually reach Willow Creek Ranch. And Ethan wasn't willing to let that happen. Adrenaline humming, he hurried back the way he came. Sunlight beat down hard by the time the ranch appeared in the distance, shimmering like a mirage. Ace was already at the gate, ears alert, sensing his return long before he arrived. Inside, the cub was awake, blinking sleepily, licking water from a shallow dish. When it saw Ethan, it let out that same soft sound, half cry, half plea. Ethan crouched, putting his forehead gently against the cub's tawny head. "Little one, we don't have much time. We have to get you somewhere safe." He called the only contact he trusted, Dr. Olivia Grant, a wildlife veterinarian who once served with him during an elephant rescue mission years back. Her voice was urgent the moment she heard Ethan's tone. When he explained what he found, she paused only a second before replying. If poachers are involved, you can't stay put. Bring the cub to my facility 2 hours south. I'll clear the back route. But Ethan. Her voice dropped. They won't stop hunting until they retrieve what they've lost. By late morning, Ethan packed hastily, medical kit, blankets, a military GPS, and a concealed rifle. He placed the cub into a sturdy crate lined with soft cloth and lifted it into the back of his rusted Jeep. Ace jumped in next to it, tail wagging with the seriousness of a soldier about to deploy. Ethan revved the engine and tore down the dirt track, dust whipping behind them like a dragon's tail. Hold on back there, Ethan muttered, eyes flicking between the road and rearview mirror. 40 minutes in, his heart stopped. A black armored pickup appeared far behind them in the mirror, dangerous as a shadow. It accelerated with predatory purpose across the scrubland. No number plates, no hesitation. Someone had found their trail. Ethan's hands tightened on the wheel. His voice was low, steady, the way it had been when guiding wounded men out of battlefield fire. Ace, whichever way this goes, don't let them take him. He slammed the accelerator as hard as it would go. The chase had begun, through dust and danger, toward a sliver of hope for a crying lion cub who had already lost too much. The Jeep howled across the scrubland like an animal running for its life, the undercarriage screaming whenever it slammed over hidden rocks. Behind them, the black truck surged closer, windshield reflecting nothing except a silhouette of 2 faceless men in desert scarves. Ethan's pulse thundered, but his hands remained steady on the wheel. He'd been in ambush zones before. He knew how to outrun death if he stayed calm. The cub whimpered from the back crate, terrified as the vehicle jolted. Ace planted himself beside it, emitting deep growls that vibrated in his chest. Easy, Ace, Ethan said through clenched teeth. Keep him calm. Ahead, a fork in the road. Ethan veered sharply left onto a narrower dirt path, nearly flipping the Jeep. Only Ace's barking cut through the roar of dust. In the rearview mirror, the black pickup mirrored every turn, relentless, ruthless. Just beyond the ridge, Ethan spotted rusted fencing, boundary line of an old disused cattle farm. He yanked the wheel. The Jeep crashed through the broken wood, bouncing hard over uneven ground. The poachers followed. A bullet whined past the Jeep's taillight with a deadly shriek. They were armed. Ethan's military instincts shredded through him like lightning. With one hand he steered violently. With the other he reached under the seat, grabbing a flare gun and shoving it onto his lap. If he could launch a flare near their windshield, he might blind them long enough to escape. He counted breaths as the truck closed within 10 meters. Another gunshot cracked, shattering Ethan's side mirror. He flicked off the main dirt path toward a deeper ravine, praying his Jeep could survive the drop. Hold on! He roared. The Jeep slammed into the sandy gorge, skidding sideways but staying upright. Ethan triggered the flare gun and aimed through his open window. With a deafening hiss, a red fireball streaked backward, exploding inches from the front of the truck. The poachers swerved violently to avoid the blaze, buying Ethan precious seconds. He raced forward, tires struggling across loose sand. Far ahead glittered something like salvation, a bridge of thick wooden slats stretching across a dried-out riverbed. Beyond it, the start of protected reserve land patrolled by armed rangers. If he could cross that boundary, the law would be on their side. The pickup recovered and roared again, chasing with renewed anger. Ethan's Jeep rattled over the wooden bridge, boards creaking ominously under the weight. As soon as the Jeep touched solid earth on the other side, he braked sharply, throwing gravel. He jumped out, popped the trunk hatch, and pulled the lion cub crate and rifle free. Ace sprang out beside him, hackles raised, barking so fiercely his chest shook. Ethan dashed toward the tall grass just meters from the reserve sign. The cub cried inside its crate, confused and afraid. Ethan ran faster, breath tearing his lungs, until he crashed onto his knees beneath an acacia tree. Through a knot of branches, he aimed his rifle toward the bridge. All he had to do was hold them a few seconds more. The black truck screeched to a stop at the bridge's edge. 2 poachers climbed out brandishing assault rifles. Ethan's heart thumped. He squeezed the trigger. One shot cracked through the morning air. It hit the wood near their feet, a warning. "Turn back!" he yelled. But they advanced. Ethan fired again. His old army precision sent a bullet biting into the gravel right between their boots. Another step, and he would be forced to drop them. The taller man raised his rifle anyway. Suddenly, Ace burst across the open ground, barking and snapping with brutal courage. Ethan's heart froze. ACNO! In that same second, an enormous thunder of engines arrived from behind Ethan. 3 reserve ranger trucks barreled down the slope, sirens splitting the air. The poachers spun around far too late. Rangers leapt from trucks with government-issued rifles drawn. Everything happened at once. Orders screamed, guns aimed, poachers dropped their weapons. One attempted to flee back into the truck but was tackled hard to the ground. Ethan remained behind the tree, still protectively crouched over the cub's crate, letting the rangers secure the chaos. His hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from relief so sharp it made his eyes sting. He whispered down to the cub inside the crate. "Not today, little one. You've already survived enough." Ace trotted back to him, sides heaving, tongue out, eyes shining with primal pride. Ethan wrapped his arm around Ace's neck. "Good boy, you saved him." Ace leaned his head into Ethan's chest, soft as a child. Minutes later, Dr. Olivia Grant arrived in one of the ranger trucks. She hugged Ethan hard, gray hair damp with sweat under her sun hat. "You absolute lunatic," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I've never been prouder." The rangers took over custody of the poachers and secured the weapons. Olivia knelt beside the crate, opening it gently. The cub crawled into her lap, trembling. She stroked its head. "We'll take him to the sanctuary's recovery unit, where he'll be safe." "Ethan, you did the impossible today." Ethan's voice cracked. He was alone. He deserved a chance. Olivia smiled gently and looked at Ace. "Seems your guardian angel here agrees." As the sun rose higher over the grassland and the poachers were driven away, Ethan knew he had crossed an invisible line that day. From exiled soldier to protector, once more. He watched as Olivia lifted the cub into her truck. But the story of this unlikely family was just beginning. Willow Creek Ranch felt different when Ethan returned, not just quieter after the chaos, but somehow lighter. He kept catching himself looking toward corners of the house where the cub had once sat trembling on a wool blanket. It had only been a few days, but the little lion had already carved a place in his home and heart. Ace, too, seemed restless. He paced the porch, whining occasionally when he passed by the empty blanket, then sat facing the distant horizon as though expecting the jeep to return carrying their golden-eyed friend. Ethan knelt beside him, brushing a hand over Ace's head. "He's safe, buddy. We did what we could." Yet every evening, Ethan found himself dialing Dr. Olivia, asking for updates like a nervous father. "He's eating well," she'd assure him. "He's gaining weight. He still cries at night, but less now. We named the enclosure after you." Hearing that made Ethan smile in a way he hadn't in years. Weeks passed. Seasons began to turn. Rain clouds gathered at the edges of plains where once only dust swirled. Ethan spent mornings repairing fences, tending to his horses, restoring order to a life that had been turned inside out. But something profound had awoken inside him, purpose that reached far beyond the boundaries of his land. Too many animals were dying, hunted, trafficked for money and vanity. He couldn't unsee now. He didn't want to. One foggy morning, a ranger truck rolled up Ethan's driveway. Ace barked joyously. Out stepped Dr. Olivia wearing a knowing smile, and behind her, wobbling forward on improved legs, was the lion cub. Stronger. Brighter. No longer afraid. Ethan knelt on instinct. The cub, recognizing a heartbeat, a smell, a memory, bounded forward and nuzzled against his chest. Ethan's eyes glazed over. Ace ran circles around them, whining with happiness. Olivia stood beside them, hands in her coat pockets. He cries every night unless we play recordings of Ace's barking on loop. She laughed softly. We think he believes Ace is his family. Ethan's throat worked around something thick. Why are you here, Liv? She pulled out a folder. Inside, official sanctuary paperwork. If you're willing, the State Wildlife Authority has agreed for you to become his official foster guardian until he's old enough to transition into the protected reserve. They trust you, Ethan. And frankly, she studied him. I think you need him as much as he needs you. Ethan signed before his fear had time to argue. Life took on a new rhythm. The cub, now officially named Milo, grew swiftly under Ethan's care. His once panicked whimpers became playful roars that rattled the windows. He followed Ace everywhere, learning how to stalk quietly, sniff tracks, and enjoy stolen naps in sunshine. Though he would one day be too wild, too powerful to live among humans, Ethan knew he was only borrowing time, giving Milo a safe childhood his mother had been robbed of. Months later, rangers arrived once more, this time for a gentle journey. Milo had outgrown the ranch and needed to join his kind in the protected reserve Ethan once fought to defend. Saying goodbye made something twist inside his chest. Milo pressed his massive head against Ethan one last time, staring with an intensity that broke and healed him all at once. Ace licked Milo's muzzle before stepping back, tail low, eyes soulful. At the reserve's release gate, Ethan whispered into Milo's ear. You survived because you were brave. Live now because you are free. Milo blinked slowly and padded through the opening onto wild grass, disappearing into the low gold of the savanna.